In this video, we are going to have a look at using the Techart TZC-01 adapter to adapt your Canon EF mount lenses onto a Nikon Z body. Kia ora, good morning everyone, Richard here. Welcome back to the channel. So just a little while ago, I did a review of the Techart TZC-01, which allow you to mount the Sony E-mount lens onto a Nikon Z camera body. And when I did the review, I also did another short video that I tried to use the TZC-01 with a Sigma MC11, both attach to each other, and then that allow us to attach the Canon EF mount lens on the Nikon body. So now we have a better solution because Techart has just released the new TZC-01 adapter, which allow you to use the Canon EF mount lenses directly onto the Nikon Z body. If you look at this adapter, it is quite a bit thicker than the TZE-01 adapter, which is like really thin. With the TZE adapter, when I attach it to a Nikon Z body, it was quite hard to take it off because adapter is more like a spacer. So there was not much space for me to hold on to grab the adapter so I can remove it. But this time with the TZC-01, we don't have this problem anymore. We can easily attach it to the body and remove it when we want to. There's a new button on the adapter which allows you to long press to memorize a particular focus distance, and later on you can just quickly press it again and you will restore to that focus distance. Just like the TZC-01, the rear cap lens cap is also the USB dock, so there's a USB adapter here, so that allow you to update the firmware when there's a new firmware available. The construction of the TZC-01 is pretty much all made of metal. It feels very solid, and if you look at the inside of it, let me take off the rear cap first. You might see that the inside of the adapter is also treated, so it just try to reduce the lens flare that is introduced by the inside of the adapter. And since I don't really have any Canon EF mount lenses, so just like last time, I made a trip to visit my friends at the Auckland Camera Center because they have a really wide range of Canon lenses on display that you can try. Actually, not just the Canon lenses, they carry pretty much all the major brands. So if you need any camera gear, go and check out their shop and just tell them that Richard sent you to see them, and I put a link to their shop down below. And they also have a website, so you can also check out their website if you are not physically here in Auckland. I picked a total of 7 different EF mount lenses to test the TZC-01 adapter. 5 of them are from Canon and 2 of them are from Sigma. Actually, after I shot this video, I went back to the shop again and I tested the Tamron 15 to 30 f2.8 lens as well. The first thing I tried is mount one of the Canon lens onto the adapter and then onto the body. I changed the aperture, it seems to work, and I took a photo and I checked whether the information like focal length is recorded correctly, and that all seems to be correct. So after that, then I go through each of the lenses and just try to test the single autofocus mode, single point. When I take photo, how does it perform? And I'm just using the center point as the autofocus point. So the first one I try is the 51.2L lens, and that lens works very well with the adapter. The autofocus speed is fast and there is not much hunting, so overall seems to be pretty reliable. And then I tried the 85 1.2L. So the autofocus also worked quite well, but the autofocus speed is slightly slower than the 51.2. But overall, it's still quite smooth and works reasonably reliable. And then I switched to the 1635 f2.8 Mark III lens. First, I tested at the wide angle and 16mm, and the autofocus speed and also reliability both are very good. Then I switched to 35mm, and autofocus also works quite well, but I think the autofocus speed is slightly slower than the 16mm. And one quite interesting thing is, when I first received the adapter a couple of weeks ago, it was running an earlier version firmware, and with that original firmware, with this lens, actually the autofocus doesn't really work at all at the 16mm. So with the latest firmware that I got, which should be 1.0, the autofocus works a lot better. And then I switched to the 70-200 f2.8 and first tested at the 17mm, and overall it works quite well, it's quite reliable, and the autofocus speed is also quite fast. Then I switched to the 200mm, the telephoto, and the performance is also pretty similar. The autofocus speed is quite good, and also reliability seems to be pretty good. From time to time, the autofocus will suddenly stop working, but when that happens, if you try to focus on somewhere else and then you move back, then normally it will work after that. Then the next lens I try is the Canon 2470 f2.8 Mark II. With this lens, the autofocus speed is pretty good, and the reliability of the autofocus is quite acceptable, and also the lens performed quite well both at the wide end 24mm and also at the tele end 70mm. So that's all the Canon lenses. Then I switched to the Sigma 51.4 art lens, and surprisingly the autofocus actually works very well with this lens. I say maybe it's even better than all the Canon lenses that I have tried so far. Autofocus is very fast, and it seems to be very reliable, and there's very minimal amount of hunting. So that was definitely a bit surprising to me, because I was expecting the Canon lens should work a bit better than the Sigma lenses. And then the lens I test is the Sigma 2470 2.8 DG lens, and just like the 51.4, the autofocus also works very well with this lens, both at the 24mm wide angle end and also the 70mm telephoto end. Autofocus performance is very good at both focal length. The autofocus speed is also very good, and it also seems to be pretty reliable. Definitely a bit of surprising, because it seems like the two Sigma lens seems to work better than the Canon lenses that I have tested so far. The last lens I test is the Tamron 15-30 f2.8 lens. With this lens, the overall autofocus performance is quite acceptable. Autofocus speed is decent, and it works quite well both at the 50mm end and at the 30mm end. However, I do hear the autofocus motor seems to work quite a bit harder than the other lenses, and also there were a few times the autofocus would struggle to lock onto the target. Overall, I think it is still more than usable. I then switched the camera to continuous autofocus mode and mount the Canon 2470 f2.8 lens onto the adapter. First, I tested at the 24mm end, and continuous autofocus works quite well at this focal length. The continuous autofocus is quite smooth, and also when I switch from a near target to far target, the transition is also pretty nice. And then I changed the focal length to 70mm. Now I notice some pretty heavy pulsing when the camera is trying to follow and track the target. So I think the continuous autofocus at 70mm is not really usable, no matter you are using it to shoot photo or video. And if you're wondering if the adapter allows you to use those dumb lens, the lens that doesn't have a CPU contact, unfortunately the answer is no. As long as you attach the adapter to the body, if you don't have any lens with an electronic contact attached to it, the camera will refuse to fire and capture any photo. It's pretty much the same as the TZE-01, so both adapters have the same limitation. When I was testing the single autofocus performance, I was just using the center autofocus point. So I did a quick test, just move the autofocus point around, just see how moving around the autofocus point would affect the autofocus performance. So I noticed that as long as the autofocus point is near the center, how do you say it? It's like 25%, yeah, like the near middle 50% of the sensor area, then the autofocus would work reasonably well. As soon as it's getting close to the 50%, or like I put a photo there, like 25% mark on each side, then the autofocus performance will start to drop quite a bit. So yeah, definitely try to keep the autofocus point near the center of the sensor if you want the best performance. And it seems like face detection and eye detection would continue to work with the adapter and one of the EF mount lens attached to the adapter. And after that, I did another quick test just to see whether the camera body's in-body image stabilizer actually still work with the adapter attached to it. So what I did is I just attached the 24-70 lens onto the body, and I set it to 17mm, and I set the shutter speed to 1/22. So if the camera doesn't have in-body image stabilizer, then the image I shot should be quite blurry. So I turned on the image stabilizer from the camera, and I shot about 25 photos, and I turned off and shot another 25 photos, and then I compared the result, and I noticed that with the image stabilizer turned on, pretty much all 25 of the photo I shot, they are all sharp, and with the image stabilizer turned off, and approximately 60% or so of the photos turned out to be blurry. So yes, the in-body image stabilizer definitely still work with this Techart adapter. There are a couple of things that I noticed when I was testing the adapter that I want to share with you guys. First is that if you want to change the lens, definitely turn off the camera first when you do that, because there was once I forgot to turn off the camera, and then I changed the lens. When I put the lens back onto the camera, I noticed the aperture setting is completely wrong, and the camera just not operating properly. But after I switch off the camera and turn it back on again, then everything back to normal. So yeah, definitely if you want to change the lens, definitely turn off the camera, which is something that you normally should do anyway. And the second thing is, I'm not too sure whether it's just my imagination or not, but every time when I put another lens onto the camera, the first few like the first 2 or 3 times when I try to autofocus on something, it doesn't work very well. But after that, after the initial 2 or 3 times, that it become just working better and better. So I'm not too sure whether it's just my brain get used to it or something, but I have noticed that a few times when I was testing the adapter. Okay, so this is my review of the TZC-01 adapter. Overall, I think the performance is reasonably good. If you already have a number of EF mount lenses and thinking of buying a Nikon Z body, then you can choose to just get the adapter and then use the EF mount lenses on your Nikon body. If you are mostly shooting landscape or portrait or a lot of everyday photo, I think the performance of the adapter should be good enough for you. But on the other hand, if you are a sports photographer or have really high requirement to have very fast and accurate and reliable autofocus, then maybe you won't be happy with the performance of the adapter. Of course, even if you don't have any EF mount lenses in your camera bag, with this adapter, it does open up the possibility for you to get some very unique lenses from the Canon catalog. For example, the 50 1.2 or the 85 1.2L. Those lenses are not available right now in the Nikon lineup, so it gives you a chance to use those lenses on your Nikon body. Okay, well, after watching this review, what do you guys think about this TZC adapter? Are you interested in buying one, or do you have any question? Just drop a comment below. I will try my best to answer all your questions. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you in my next video.